Hello there, coming to you live from the capital Jakarta, Indonesia. You are watching special reports here on TV Our World. The Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, is this afternoon set to meet with Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto. We are your hosts in the studio today. I'm Rahmat Idris.
And I'm Siska Becker. That is right, we are going to cover the visit by the Malaysian Prime Minister, who is set to meet Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto at the State Palace on Friday, today, during his official visit to Jakarta, which is considered as part of the ongoing commitment of both countries to deepen their close and long-standing bilateral relations at the highest leadership level.
Well, Malaysia's foreign ministry said the visit serves as a reciprocal gesture following the visits by President Prabowo Subianto to Malaysia earlier this year for bilateral engagements and to participate in the 46th ASEAN Summit, the second ASEAN GCC Summit, and the ASEAN GCC China Summit on May 26 to 27.
The two leaders of neighboring countries are expected to review key bilateral issues and to follow up on the outcomes of the 46th ASEAN Summit, the second ASEAN GCC Summit, and the ASEAN GCC China Summit, as well also to exchange views on regional developments and global issues of mutual concern.
Right, we have exciting couple of hours here in the studio up next, as we are also here in the presence of two very esteemed guests joining us for the conversations on the topic today. Allow me to introduce right next to me the senior lecturer at International Relations Studies of Universitas Indonesia. Is also teaching at Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C., Ibu Susi Sri Suparin S. Sudarman. Bu Susi, always a pleasure and an honor to have you in our studio. Thank you so much.
I'm honored by being invited to this
Thank you so much for coming again.
Welcome, Bu Susi.
And at the end of our conversation table is the presidential spokesperson and expert staff on economic issues, Fitra Faisal Hastiadi. Mas Fitra, thank you so much for joining us right after your Friday prayer right here in Jakarta time. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming here, Mas Fitra.
Sure.
All right, so before we go into our live feed from the State Palace and to tell you a little bit more about the visit, we're now going to give you more context and understanding of the implication of the Prime Minister's visit here in Indonesia. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim will undertake an official visit to Indonesia on Friday today as part of the ongoing commitment of both nations to further deepen their close and long-standing bilateral relations at the highest leadership level, Malaysia's Foreign Ministry have said.
The visit serves as a reciprocal gesture following the visits by President Prabowo Subianto to Malaysia earlier this year for bilateral engagements and to participate in the 46th ASEAN Summit, the second ASEAN GCC Summit, and the ASEAN GCC China Summit on May 26-27, bernama news agency on Thursday. During the visit, Anwar is scheduled to hold a restricted meeting with Prabowo to review key bilateral issues, following up on the outcomes of the 46th ASEAN Summit and the second ASEAN GCC Summit and the ASEAN GCC China Summit, as well as exchange views on regional developments and global issues of mutual concern. He will be accompanied by Foreign Minister Datuk Seri Muhammad Hassan, Investment, Trade and Industry Minister Datuk Seri Tengku Zafrul Tengku Abdul Aziz, Higher Education Minister Datuk Seri Dr. Zamri Abdul Qadir, Communication Minister Datuk Fahmi Fadzil, and Plantation and Commodities Minister Datuk Seri Johari Abdul Ghani. In 2024, Indonesia was Malaysia's sixth largest trading partner globally and the second largest among Asian member states. Bilateral trade increased by 4.5% to $25.5 billion from $24.39 billion in 2023. As close neighbors with deep historical ties and as founding members of ASEAN, this official visit underscores the shared commitment of Malaysia and Indonesia to strengthen bilateral cooperation for the mutual benefit of both nations and the broader ASEAN community, said the statement as reported by Bernama.
Well, Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is Malaysia's 10th Prime Minister. Anwar experienced a decades-long political journey before sworn in as Prime Minister in November 2022. Let's take a look at Anwar's brief profile.
Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim was born on August 10, 1947 in Bukit Mertajam, Penang, Malaysia. He holds Bachelor of Arts for Malay Studies from University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. Anwar began his political career since his time in university in the late 1960s, where he became known as an Islamist student leader. He also co-founded the Muslim Youth Movement of Malaysia, or ABIM, in 1971. In 1982, Anwar accepted an invitation from the Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad to join United Malays National Organization, or UMNO, and his government. Anwar's political career advanced swiftly before being sacked in 1998. After being sacked from UMNO since 1998, Anwar has led Malaysia's multi-ethnic Parti Keadilan Rakyat, or PKR. Anwar Ibrahim held various government positions before being jailed in 1999 on charges of corruption and sodomy. Among various positions in the government he served included being Malaysian Minister of Culture, Youth and Sports, Minister of Agriculture, Minister of Education, Finance Minister, and Deputy Prime Minister in 1993 to 1998. Malaysia held the 15th general election on November 19, 2022, and it was expected to resolve ongoing domestic political instability. Anwar Ibrahim contested the 15th general election as a Member of Parliament for Tambun and Chairman of Pakatan Harapan, or PH coalition. For the first time in Malaysia's history, the general election ended with a hung parliament after no party obtained a simple majority of 112 seats in the 222-seat parliament to form a new government. Pakatan Harapan garnered the highest.
And there you have it, a brief profile of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim, who we've received first has just made land here in Jakarta Halim Perdana Kusuma Airport, and on his way to Merdeka Presidential Palace to meet with President Prabowo Subianto. And we are giving you live pictures of the early preparations ahead of his arrival. Well, there you have it. All preparations are in place. We suppose, as always, per the traditions of Prabowo's as Indonesia presidents, in recently welcoming heads of states and heads of governments to Jakarta with a little bit of military touch to the welcoming ceremony.
That's true, and we can expect there's going to be quite a discussion between the two leaders, because each will be bringing their entourage of ministers to exchange views on mutual concern, especially on how to deepen the ties of relations and economic trades between the two countries.
That's right, Siska. And we believe that upon arrival at Halim Perdana Kusuma Airport, that's going to take another 15 to 20 minutes. Roads have been cleared up for the whole entourage to make their way to the presidential palace. In the meantime, while we wait for more live pictures coming in from the venue, let's just go on ahead with our conversations with our two guests here in the studio. First, I'd like to go to you, Bu Suzy, just to sort of lay the foundations to what we're going to be conversing about throughout the next couple of hours here. The basic values of Indonesia's relations with Malaysia throughout the decades. Walk us through it, please.
Okay. Let me start with the most logical thing that I heard from a Lemhanas conference yesterday.
Jakarta Geopolitical Forum,
yes.
right?
The woman from area said something logical. It says, G7 is old, China is at present, and ASEAN is the future.
Nice.
So this is a good step in terms of making sure that the ASEAN members are getting to get too close together, because we never succeeded in practicing something that will benefit everyone. Everyone goes into the venue of superpowers, you know, like Myanmar goes to China, and then Laos goes to China, Cambodia goes to China. We need to be a little bit closer together and then get the government to focus more on ASEAN, because Pak Prabowo needs to give ASEAN a chance. And we need to continue what Ibu Retno has done, and maybe ASEAN will be the future, as what Area said.
That's true. And this visit occurs while Malaysia holds the ASEAN chair, and Indonesia is also pushing for some key issues, including the Timor-Leste and Papua New Guinea's inclusion in ASEAN. Now, Bu Suzy, in your expert opinion, what strategic signals does this send about Indonesia-Malaysia cooperation within the ASEAN framework?
Malaysia is now the chair of ASEAN, so that's his duty to make sure that the relations between Malaysia and Indonesia get smoother as we have changed government, and then maybe reminding our government to be more attentive to what ASEAN is doing, and maybe we can produce the real market, because we are very wealthy if they get together, right? Just we need to clean up in terms of human rights violations and trade and criminalities that goes on, and has
regional stability too, when it comes to our waters across the region of ASEAN.
We need to make everyone feels comfortable, and feels comfortable is not enough, because money is the key. But then how do we do that? We need to unify and then make our trade be better. Maybe the supply chain will come from ASEAN rather than coming from China. Maybe there's a chance that we become stronger with our relations with other countries that need our goods.
Right, so right from the get-go, ASEAN has become the main focus of today's meeting between the two heads of government, Mas Fitra. So Indonesia being the biggest economy essentially in ASEAN, and Malaysia is one of our closest allies, if not the sixth biggest trading partners to Indonesia. What do you think will be the main outcomes of today's meeting between Prabowo and Anwar Ibrahim?
So it should be a dual discussion on bilateral and also regional stuff. So we're also hoping that ASEAN can become a major hub. ASEAN is youthful, progressive, and one of the fastest growing region in the world. So it's slowly becoming the new hope of the global collapsing system. But in another way, we can see that ASEAN is not reaching its potentialities yet, because since the first establishment from 1967, we are seeing that the intra-regional trade share in ASEAN is just less than 25%. So if you're comparing ASEAN with other regions, for example, EU has more than 70%. So in that sense, ASEAN is progressing, but ASEAN alone, I think, is going nowhere. So in that sense, it's actually very crucial to go beyond ASEAN. We're also talking about the bilateral cooperation between Indonesia and Malaysia. We have now, all in all, the total trade 25 billion of US dollar. But if you, for example, if you compare it with China, Indonesia, US, this is
eclipse everything. That is the number.
It's actually just left behind. So in a way, that to go beyond ASEAN is actually really the answer. How ASEAN can become the point of consolidation. We are in a world is very fragmented, just like today. We are actually offering neutrality, the ASEAN way, meaning that we are friends to everyone. We are friends with China, to the US, to the Russia, the rest of the emerging markets, and we can actually serve as the global and regional hub.
All right. Now, as we said before, Mas Fitra, this state official visit today is a follow-up of many numerous meetings between the two leaders, and President Prabowo and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim actually met in Malaysia in January, in that meeting they agreed to strengthen strategic cooperation in various sectors: economy, defense, education, and even energy. Now, do you think that the two countries, Indonesia and Malaysia, should set up a new partnership initiative in addition of the ones already existing, to strengthen the ties, especially economic ones?
Sure, because Indonesia and Malaysia, in a way, we have so many proximities to each other. So in terms of, for example, CPO, we are covering 80% of the total world production. So
we are both largest producers.
Yes, of course, of course. So in that sense, we can actually naturally we are actually having such a close bond. And in terms of, we have the terminology in international economics, gravity equation, coming from the Newtonian gravity equation. The closest to you is actually the most important. So we have the gravity, the GDP. We have also the geographical proximity. We have the similarities in language, and then culture. So as a matter of fact, we have so many people back in the day was coming from Indonesia to Malaysia, and then we have so many descendants of Indonesian people there in Malaysia. So in a way, that's actually becoming a major foundation of this future and current bilateral cooperation. So in that sense, we understand each other, but sometimes we understand, but we also hate each other sometimes. Sometimes in the grassroots,
all brothers and sisters and families have their disputes,
love and hate.
But there's only love in there.
There has been up and downs.
Ups and downs.
All families have that.
Yeah, sure. But in a way that is actually the indicator that we are actually very close. We know each other. We know each other conditions. And we are competing to each other, but in the other sense, we are actually cooperating to each other. So in this, U.S., China, Russia, and also Iran versus Israel, we are actually offering the world the new hope. We are the major, we are the region that is actually very neutral. We are offering so many things. You can invest here because it's actually less risky. So in a way that if we have this World War III, coming from between Iran, Israel, and we have the nuclear catastrophe, in ASEAN region is actually
it's been said that we are the safest. Indonesia,
one of the safest regions in the world.
So it's, we are very blessed, geographically speaking.
And it just doesn't spark interest to bomb us. Bu Susi, now that we're on the topic, and I mean, here we are, in less than 6 months, the two leaders met again. And during that particular time in January, President Prabowo meeting with Anwar Ibrahim, who in person said to him that President Prabowo is my brother, and in sickness and in health, rain or shine, if we can put it that way. That's just an illustration of the closeness between them, because both of them started their work in the government. The trajectory towards leadership has been set for them since their early beginnings, if we may say, and they've shared that particular journey together. Walk us through this closeness, if we may, that will lead us to another momentous meeting that will take place today.
Let me just put the hard part.
Okay.
The hard part is for us to introduce to the Western allies that the language is about coordination and to be accepting, equidistant for everyone. Because as we practice equidistant, like what Pak Marty Natalgawa has proposed, they're not happy.
Right.
You cannot be close to China, you cannot be close to America, you have to be close to just one of them. See?
So you're saying there's no such thing as a non-bloc policy, free and active?
Not the time to be neutral?
No, we're not prepared with the textbook like America has prepared textbook to propose realism as their ideology for everyone to understand. They socialize people through the World Bank, through the IMF, through defense posture and all that. And usually defense is the beginning of the trade, not trade to defense. So ASEAN must unite to pick up the theme. What sort of theme that can be acceptable to the power that be? Because the story, the narrative all this time is about Westphalia, and Westphalia 1648 needs one hegemonic power. And this hegemonic power has been challenged by railway of China throughout the island nation like Eurasia.
Okay.
So it's a shock for them because all the tenets of defense have changed from maritime, blue water navy protects trade, into railway, accessing all small countries by railway to export and import. So they have to adjust to this circumstance, and I think it needs ASEAN with a bigger sets of mindset. So to unite between all these nations that have been in need of money coming from Russia or from China. As you see, Russia is also in Myanmar, aside from Myanmar being close to China. And then we talk about Laos, we talk about Cambodia. They're all
Cambodia and Thailand is in dispute at the moment. Yeah.
So we should emulate how the West have defined the territory with knowledge. And knowledge is not something that is the expertise of ASEAN. They talk, but not textual books produced to say, this is the best thing for us in this whole region, because it's about game theory, it's about strategic management. How do you create this? Because for trade to happen, you have to have stag hunt, game theory, not prisoner's dilemma. Okay, this is strategic management. And we never talk about it. We just go our own way. And then we need to implement what Pak Marty Latalagawa said about equidistant. And the West doesn't accept equidistant. They keep putting alliance, Quad or AUKUS, yeah. And then Russia comes in and wants a base in Papua, and China wants Natuna. You know, it's like, come on, guys, come and step forward and then conceptualize. For me, it's theoretical. For other people, maybe practice.
I think we've already expanded our horizon on the implications of the relations between Indonesia and Malaysia, and we get a sense of the hot discussion that will be taking place between the two leaders very soon. So we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. Our discussion will be further discussed right here in the studio of TV World while we continue with the special report. Don't go anywhere.
Well, thank you for still being with us on today's edition of Special Report here on TV Our World, as we cover for the next few hours the state visit of Prime Minister of Malaysia Anwar Ibrahim here in Jakarta, Indonesia, meeting tete-a-tete and closed-door meetings soon to take place at the President Palace with President of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto. And we are still joined by our two guests here in this studio as we deep dive into what are the potential issues at hand on the table that these two leaders will hash out essentially. Now I'd like to go first to you, Mas Fitra, because there's a lot of issues if we can just nitpick into each and every one of them. You mentioned we share some true sense of semblance of similarities between Indonesia and Malaysia, in particular having the DNA of, we have the Indonesian people and the Bumi Putra people of Malaysia, and they also have their Chinese and Indian descent. And on that sense alone, does this open up a plethora of opportunities for us to sort of tighten our cooperations and friendships, in particular under the chairmanship of ASEAN this year? There's so much to do within this entity.
So of course, I remember just a couple of years ago, back then in 2011, when Surin Pitsuwan, the ASEAN former General Secretary, once he was actually aiming for a more closer relationship among ASEAN member countries, aiming for a 30% minimum of intra-regional trade share. But up until today, we haven't seen this figure yet, because we are still actually, very fragmented. We are actually very...
So 30% is the goal, or
30% is the goal in 2015.
Oh, that was quite a while ago.
Quite a while ago, because we had before an ASEAN Economic Community. So in a way that these two leaders are now discussing the potentialities of having a more closer relationship in terms of economic ties.
Yeah.
And then we have also, a typical way to actually negotiate with Trump tariff, which is actually our primary concern nowadays, because next July will be actually the end of the tariff halt.
Yeah,
so
the 90-day pause, as Trump would put it.
So
we are on shaky ground at the moment.
Sure. In a way that we need actually to respond it both bilaterally and also as ASEAN member countries. And also we have seen what happened geopolitically happening in the Iran versus Israel, that is actually disrupting the world's energy. And then the Hormuz Strait was actually very crucial, and it's actually a very important issue. Energy issue is actually another thing to be considered.
Right.
Okay, before we continue though, let's go to our live feed at the Merdeka Palace. We are hearing that the entourage of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is now approaching, if not already there. So let's just take a look to make sure we don't miss the arrival of the Prime Minister.
Exactly. We've received words that the earlier parts of the welcoming ceremony of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has started to take place. Okay, the latest update right now, this is the initial preparation still, and the main entourage, the group of PM Anwar Ibrahim, is still making its way to the Merdeka Palace as we speak right now, sister.
We are patiently awaiting
with
their
bated
arrival
breath
while we continue our discussion here with our experts. So Mas Fitra, if I could first piggyback on what Rahmat said earlier about this special relationship between Indonesia and Malaysia, the sense of kinship, serumpun, that makes this relation truly unique in its dynamics. We've had our ups and downs, as we previously said, but also the closeness between our two countries cannot be stronger, especially nowadays with the very publicly warm ties of our two leaders, of President Prabowo and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. But do you think this special personal rapport between the two leaders can actually translate into policy cohesion?
So it's 50% of the discussion, because it's actually becoming serving as a modalities, right?
Okay.
So we need to understand to each other in order to progress. So in a way that we are now seeing that in terms of the energy disruptions, we are also talking about how we can have an energy sovereignty. We have the CPO that can be converted into
that is one of the main goals of President Prabowo as well. Energy security, food security, even water security for our country.
And then ASEAN can become a regional hub for food. We have agricultural everywhere in ASEAN, and most of the ASEAN countries actually are very rich in terms of agricultural sector.
Vast land.
And Indonesia is also focusing more on agriculture, as it was actually reflected in the first quarter of the year, 10.53% of growth in the agricultural sector. So in a way that we can actually becoming a regional hub in terms of agricultural sector, and this is actually the very foundation that can actually uniquely serving ASEAN to differentiate it with other region. So in a way that we are becoming one of the most important region in terms of food sufficiency and food security. So in that way, we can actually invite more investment, not in terms that we need your money. No, you need us. You
for
need
our
to
resources.
invest here. You need to actually collaborate with us in order to actually having the global food security.
Right.
Food sufficiency is here in ASEAN, and we can serve the world if we invest here. So we can, of course, ASEAN has these modalities, but of course we need to collaborate, because as I mentioned to you earlier, ASEAN alone is going nowhere. We need also to collaborate to other countries in the other region.
I think one of the collaborations that people are expecting that would happen, conceptualized through this visit, is the cooperation between Pertamina and Petronas in energy sector. How do you think this visit will accelerate the actualization of this project?
Yeah, hypothetically speaking, this is actually very good, and then Pak Prabowo is actually very having a very major focus on energy sustainability. It's not always coming from the domestic capacity, but we can actually enlarge this capacity with regional cooperation. So not only with Malaysia, because Malaysia is now serving as the chairman of this year's ASEAN, so we can actually also talking about the what is actually the future of ASEAN.
Right. You mentioned briefly there that we are attracting investment into our country, which is one of the major goals as well for President Prabowo Subianto in order to achieve that elusive 8% economic growth, at least by the end of his administration. Right. Do you think that Malaysia is playing a certain key significant roles as we put all of these considerations and investment attractions into account?
Sure. So in order to achieve 8% target, we need at least the investment needs is about 10,000 trillion of rupiahs. Covering 6 core sectors: energy, ICT, water sanitation, water resources, transportation, and housing. And we can only actually, use 3,000 trillion of domestic capacity in order to achieve that target. 7 trillion of which is coming from abroad. So that is why we need actually to cooperate to each other. So in other sense, we are also seeing that the foreign funds is now having a unique behavior, de-risking from the U.S. portfolios. So they are actually searching for another safe haven. Traditionally speaking, aside of the U.S. dollar, Japanese yen and gold is actually becoming the safe haven. But we don't have enough portfolios, so it's not diversified, it's not truly diversified. So the foreign investors also seeing ASEAN, the risk premium is very low because we are not in conflicting countries. We are also emerging, growing, so we can become slowly as the next safe haven of the world.
Right. Yeah. You have something to add to this, Ms. Susie?
Of course.
Please do.
Good governance is important.
Right.
It's not being discussed. And foreigners, even though we are less risk if they invest in us, the trouble of investing in countries like ASEAN has to be discussed because
you have to weigh all the risks and options.
Risk in terms of what are the guarantees that profit will come, right? Even though it's less risky. So maybe ASEAN should start with new concepts, new concepts that's never discussed. They always discuss about South China Sea, so this and that, and then the good governance is disappear. We have a lot of gold. Don't worry, we have enough gold. If it's not plundered.
Within the region of ASEAN or Indonesia?
Indonesia alone.
Indonesia. Yeah, okay. That we do.
Like in Papua, the pegunungan, the mountains,
it's all lined up with gold.
Up with gold. Yeah, and all other areas too. So we're just not behaving very well. We're not introducing new ideas like a doctrine so that everyone accepts it and work accordingly. We're still like Wild Wild West.
Okay. You talk of the need of a new concept in presenting ourselves for future partners, for investors. What sort of concept do you have in mind, Bu Susi, if you can enlighten us? Like any ideas of
if you
concept that
are
could work for us?
predictable. We are not predictable.
We're not predictable.
We're not predictable.
Okay.
I used my IR theory, okay? To face international economics and wars, you need to be democratic. Second one, you need to have coalition partners that are stable. And just take a look at us, whether our coalition patterns are stable or not. Are they just seeking corruption, or are they seeking the benefit for the country at large? We need to have a consensus. To bet that Sukarno didn't succeed in establishing a nationhood in terms of the discourse, right? I mean, I'm in the U.S. when I was a kid, and I pledge allegiance to the flag every day. And you need to instill this. And so, if you see America as if it's a liberal society, it's not a liberal society. It's a nationalistic
Very much
society.
So, actually, yeah.
If you listen to the American media talking about Iran, the the worship of the president who's done this, the technology, the bomb this or bomb that. It's like, oh my God, come on, give me a break, you know. We need to have nationhood that is predictable.
Okay.
Because something that's unpredictable is not attractive.
All right. Bu Susi, if we could take our discussion back to bilateral issues between our two countries, I want to get your opinion on some vexed issues that faces our both nations. But before that, let's go to our live feed. I think we are seeing now.
Yeah, the first part of the entourage of PM Anwar Ibrahim says, approaching Merdeka Palace. It's not troops with on horse, but they're riding, riding towards
the visuals are looking quite regal right now.
Very much so, Siska, and we are expecting for the Prime Minister entourage to arrive soon at the Merdeka Palace. Oh, we do have, troops on horse riding towards the palace as well, adding to the regalness, if I may add to it.
Quite an elaborate setup,
very lavish indeed, if I may say so. And we are expecting
welcome his brother.
Exactly.
And neighbor.
Through rain or shine, as you said earlier in January. So this alone marks such, I mean, it's a gesture of grand welcome on behalf of the Indonesian government, I must say. And I'd like to go over to you again, Bu Susi, as we look at this level of magnitude, so grandiosity for me, grandeur for me to say. But Malaysia is right now is nearly halfway into its chairmanship of ASEAN. Every single chairmanship of ASEAN, I believe they would like to make their own mark, as we did back in 2023. A lot of issues at hand. But give us your take on the first half of ASEAN chairmanship of Malaysia's homeworks that have been tackled and homeworks that have been left behind and not put on the table for the discussions, and things they need to settle with in the next part of their chairmanship.
Myanmar is not resolved.
Right. That's always a thorn in each chairmanship since we discussed.
And then the heaviness of, heavy-handedness of China is not balanced properly. You know, because ASEAN members need their money and need whatever it is that comes with it. And then we'll be talking about borders. They're saying about borders will be discussed by next month or so. Borders, you know, we have problems with borders also because nationhood not complete if everybody sort of like become part of another country, because it's easier to live in and buy things from Malaysia rather than buy things from Indonesia. We have many things that need to be adjusted, and then we still have the Ambalat issue, right? Like Ambalat, and we had other territorial issue. I mean, my professor talks about Asia as the hub of crises because all territory disputes are not resolved.
Okay. Yeah. This is going to be one of the hot points of contention actually in the discussion between the two leaders. As we said, Bu Susi, the vexed issues of maritime boundaries, we have the Ambalat territorial dispute, and there are also ongoing land and maritime boundary talks between Indonesia and Malaysia, like the recently buoyed by the Malacca and Sulawesi Sea treaties. Now, in your opinion, how critical it is to accelerate these resolutions to avoid further tensions between Indonesia and Malaysia?
By talking, of course, by getting close together, and by maybe the best trade-off is to have economic trade-off, because that's always a solution. I say, what can we give Malaysia that they can reciprocate, you know? And
so to reach that sweet balance, you're saying.
The
sweet spot.
The sweet spot is where the
everyone agrees to it. All right, as we converse now, the presidential car of the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim with the car plate of Malaysia in cheers and joys with the students on their holiday today, wearing uniforms, standing there at the palace, welcoming the car as it's made its way to the driveway of the Merdeka Palace. We are waiting for moments for the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim just simply exit the car and be welcomed by the President of Indonesia.
Red Rahmat, today is actually the national holiday. It's the
It
Islamic
is.
New Year.
It is a
which
very
makes
joyous
today-
holiday,
yeah,
which some of them couldn't experience because they have to be there.
so it feels more festive.
And there you have it. Our president, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, approaching the car,
Yeah.
let alone, he's not waiting at the red carpet. He's going right to the car, and there they are, the
Yes.
President of Indonesia walking side by side with the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim.
Two leaders
All
finally
right.
reunited.
That was an interesting note there, Siska. I'd
Yes.
like to get your take on that very quickly, if you will, Mas Fitra. Why the first Muharram, the first day of Islamic calendar, was chosen by these leaders to meet? Is it coincidence, or is it chosen just to
Yeah.
mark something that they
there.
believe in? Hint, hint, Middle East issues.
An implicit meaning.
Please
agree.
do.
So
What's
it's
your take,
actually
Mas Fitra?
it's more like an
hard to read, so.
administrative problem. You don't have any symbolic issues or whatsoever.
All right. And now let's listen in to the official welcoming ceremony of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim at Merdeka Palace.
Lapor upacara penyambutan siap dimulai. Selanjutnya pasukan siap diperiksa. Upacara penyambutan telah dilaksanakan. Laporan selesai. Kembali ke tempat.
Sendiri.
So President Prabowo Subianto and Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim just finished the troops inspection,
That's right.
and now they're meeting each other's ministerial entourage.
That's right, Siska. We believe that at this point, the official welcoming ceremony has concluded, and now it's the welcoming ceremony and introductions of members of the entourage, members of the cabinets who are along. We have with us Sugiono, of course, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mutia Hafidz of the Communications and Digital Affairs. We have our Economic Coordinating Minister, Erlangga Hartarto, and now on behalf of PM Anwar Ibrahim introducing his members of the entourage as well, further solidifying each and every part of the agreements that will come out of the tete-a-tete meeting today. Right, and as always, per the traditions, the guest of state is ushered towards the main reception area in the building, where they take a quick photo op before signing the guest book, essentially, and head into the initial exchange before the closed door meeting.
So of course, we are expecting a lot of agreements later on to be signed as well by Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. This will be the first of many signatures will be signing today.
Yeah. I believe things will pick up from the January meeting as well, Siska, something that they probably preliminary discussed and now put into fruition in this particular meeting here in Jakarta, Indonesia. Talk about the closeness again, Mas Fitra, if you will, because I mentioned this to Bu Susi earlier, that these two figures, they started their, I mean, we know their track record since they were young in each respective country. Anwar Ibrahim has been known to be politically active since his youth, which has led him to a very clear track record, despite all of the criminalizations and everything that's the trial and tribulations, if I may say it. But he has been such a hailed politician in his country. I mean, he's set precedent to the way a young politician should go about when they want to lead a political party and become a leader.
Sure. These two leaders actually inspired to each other.
Yeah. So continue on. Since we're waiting for them to greet the press for the first time.
We heard that the Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim saying that Pak Prabowo is his inspiration as a leader.
I see.
Also, Pak Prabowo also saying the same. Yeah. The Prime Minister of Anwar is also one of the inspirational leader. So in a way that they're actually very close and they inspired each other. And then, of course, we saw before Pak Presiden, Pak Prabowo riding Maung.
Yes.
So I remember several months ago, as a matter of fact, and the inauguration of our president in last year, my friend, the journalist of one of the Malaysian national TV, asked me about how to buy the car. So it's actually very beautiful.
Such an interest towards Maung.
To know if it's available for the public.
Yes, of course. And Pak Prabowo saying that I can buy foreign cars if I want, but I need to promote our own local product.
Right.
So in a way that this can become our economic potentialities in terms of economic cooperation and bilateral economic cooperation.
Yeah, let's have our own Proton.
Exactly. And then you need to remember that we also have Professor Brian Yuliarto there.
The Minister of Higher Education,
and Science. Pak Prabowo is also focusing more on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So that can become our actually collaborative sector between Malaysia and
an avenue to explore there.
An avenue to be explored in terms of industrial collaboration, in terms of having regional sovereignty So we can bring ASEAN, we can invite more investment, but of course we need to actually enlarge our domestic capacity in order to attract investment. Not that we are coming to other countries and, hey, I need your money, no. But they are actually coming because they need us, because our industrial potentialities. So in a way that we can have this kind of collaboration that's actually very progressive. And yeah, of course, not only bilaterally, we can also talk about regional matters, as Prof. Susi mentioned earlier, on borders, on Myanmar, and so on and so forth. Because ASEAN has so many problems. We have also our own modalities as ASEAN way, but we need to define what is actually ASEAN way. Sometimes it's becoming our constraint. Yeah, the ASEAN way, the leniency. We have so many, meetings. We have so many high-level meetings, but we need realization. So in a way that these two leaders, I think they're actually the one that can walk the talk.
Right. So the ASEAN way is not just the way for them holding each other's hands for photo ops at each and every meeting of the leaders. It goes way more than that, as you said. Siska.
All right, so I would love to talk to our experts actually about the profile of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. As you said before, both of the leaders have this commonalities between them. They shared a quite colorful journey in their political career. The same can be said with Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. I mean, for us growing up, we know him as an opposition leader, as a political activist, as you said, and now as the leader of Malaysia. I want to know your take, Bu Susi, on the capacities and abilities of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim to lead Malaysia in today's world with so many geopolitical tensions going on, with economic hurdles going on and off in different regions of the world. How do you see him leading Malaysia?
And
well,
to get Mahathir Mohamad behind it as well, that says something.
I mean,
and challenges.
And after that huge financial scandal that happened in Malaysia
the one
a few
MDB
years ago.
thing.
Challenges train you. And Anwar Ibrahim has been protected by Wolfowitz, actually. So they both, in a sense, have American links, right?
Okay.
Prabowo and Anwar Ibrahim. And then I think the toughness of Anwar comes from his struggle of becoming. It would be like Mandela, Mandela
has been persecuted.
Persecuted, and then he became a good leader. I think all our Asian leaders been imprisoned, most of them,
or exiled at any point
at
in their
some
life.
point in life, and so I think when I see Anwar, I see his discourse and I'm attracted to it because he seems to be so smart, so fluent, so with substance, you know what I mean? I hardly see Indonesian having the dare of, okay, this is my viewpoint. You know what I mean? They sort of like hide and not say anything.
You think he's more decisive in his stance and decisions?
Very much so. Even evaluating Indonesia, he's pretty sharp, So I appreciate that kind of leadership because it can be a model. Indonesia need a leadership model that can face the audience with truthfulness and directness and courage. You need courage as a leader. Otherwise, how do you move a nation? You need someone to move a nation. Okay, people have different take. Like if you're a populist, like Trump, he would do something. But if you see, let's say President Obama, when his programs are being criticized, he goes around all the states to promote his program. And we need to do the same thing in Indonesia and in ASEAN, because each leaders are kind of like, they are not in a good economic stance maybe, and they need money from China, and so they are kept quiet because China doesn't like someone criticizing. They're not very open-minded in terms of relationship. So I think we need to learn a little bit more from Anwar, and Anwar is very brave in saying things about the wars in the Middle East.
Yeah.
I think that's a good example.
Okay.
And we are much too careful. Indonesia much too careful in not saying anything. Maybe it's from their feudal past, right?
Yeah.
Even though Malaysia has kingdoms, the kings are different from the kingdoms of Java.
Yeah,
The Java kingdoms
the
very-
sultanates that they have, yeah.
It's very, very strict in terms of power mongers. They will eliminate other people when it challenges them. And I see Malaysian kings are not doing the kind of thing that Javanese kings would do. Such as we know the history of all the kings of Java. They kill each other. You know?
Power mongering, as you mentioned.
Yeah, power mongering, and it leaves a remnant of anyone who gets a position not doing professionally what they are tasked to do, but they're accumulating power for themselves. We need to balance this and learn from other nations, because other nations may have good educative element for Indonesian to be more predictable.
Yeah.
I need Indonesian to be more predictable, to be courageous in terms of stating something so that people can read you, and not probing into something that is not us, you know.
Asfitra, what do you think we can learn from Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim as a leader, especially maybe in his economic sense, and how he has led Malaysia out of the financial crisis that happened a few years ago?
I second what Prof. Susi mentioned earlier, that we need to be decisive. And Pak Prabowo, so I learned from the first hand, Pak Prabowo is saying to us that we need a clear roadmap.
Okay.
We need to eliminate inefficiencies, corruption. We know that the government is inefficient. So because of that, we can collaborate with the private sectors. So as a matter of fact, Danantara was pretty much inspired by Kasana, although we have also some problems with Hasana. But we can actually learn also what happened with Kasana and what can we actually do with Danantara. So we have so many conflicting figures, we have constraints, but also we have potentialities and progress. So in a way that I also agree with Prof. Susi when mentioning about institution. So that's actually the very factor that's actually becoming the government focus nowadays. Yeah, exactly. We have the world governance indicator, political stability, government effectiveness, control of corruption, rule of law, regulatory quality, and voice and accountability. So, of course, we are still progressing. We are not in a very ideal scenario yet, but we are actually covering several things. For example, corruption. Pak Prabowo asked the ministries, you need to use your money in our priority program. You need to use your money for the people, not for your own benefit. So in a way that, of course, we have so many problems nowadays, but we're actually try to actually try to find solutions, small steps.
Stepping forward and
stepping
progressing.
forward, just like what Neil Armstrong once said. This is a small step for me, but it's a giant step for humankind.
And as we take more steps into the next part of our program, let's go on with the next report now. Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim, is on official visit to Indonesia on June 27th to strengthen bilateral cooperation and follow up on regional summit outcomes.
Now let's take a look at Malaysia, the Melayu Kingdom, and a democratic monarchy in Southeast Asia.
Malaysia, a country in Southeast Asia, is lying just north of the equator and composed of two non-contiguous regions. Peninsular Malaysia or Semenanjung Malaysia, which is also called West Malaysia on the Malay Peninsula, and East Malaysia, which is on the island of Borneo. The Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur, lies in the western part of the peninsula, about 40 kilometers from the coast, and the administrative center, Putrajaya, is located about 25 kilometers south of the capital. Malaysia, a member of the Commonwealth, represents the political merge of territories that were formerly under British rule. When it was established on September 16, 1963, the Federation of Malaysia comprised the territories of Malaya, the island of Singapore, and the colonies of Sarawak and Sabah in northern Borneo. In August 1965, Singapore seceded from the Federation and became an independent republic. Malaysia is the only federal country in Southeast Asia. It is composed of 13 states and 3 federal territories. 9 of the states are the sultanates and have hereditary rulers, generally titled sultans, and the other 4 have appointed governors. Meanwhile, the 3 federal territories include Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, and Labuan. The oldest sultanate in Malaysia is the Kedah Sultanate, which was established in 1136 and is considered one of the oldest kingdoms in the world. Initially a Hindu kingdom, it later transitioned into an Islamic sultanate. The King of Malaysia is the head of state, while the Prime Minister is head of government. Executive power is vested in the cabinet, which is led by the Prime Minister and is chosen from among both houses of the Parliament. The current head of state is His Majesty Sri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong Sultan Ibrahim, and the incumbent head of government is Prime Minister Anwar bin Ibrahim. In 2024, Malaysia's estimated population is 34.1 million. This represents a growth of 1.9% compared to the previous year. The Malaysian population comprises many ethnic groups, with Bumiputra making up the largest share at 70.4%, followed by Chinese at 22.4% and Indians at 6.5%, while the remaining are classified as other. In terms of economy, Malaysia saw a strong growth in 2024 with a growth of 5.1%. This expansion was driven by a combination of factors, including increased domestic demand, strong investment, and a rebound in exports. The year 2024 also had a moderation in inflation at 1.8%. Malaysia's economic outlook for 2025 is positive, with expectations of robust growth despite global uncertainties. The country's focus on domestic demand, strategic investments, and effective fiscal management are key factors contributing to this positive outlook.
All right, we're going to bring in more visuals from Merdeka Palace as we have it. And now that the closed-door meeting of tete-a-tete is currently ongoing, but we'll return in just a few minutes right here in Special Reports. Don't go anywhere.
Stay close. You're still watching our special report on TV RI World to cover the official state visit by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Still with me, Siska Becker, and my partner.
I'm Rahmat Idris. We're still knee-deep, or rather neck-deep, into the conversation here. Mas Firta, we touched this a little bit, and you also mentioned that Indonesia and Malaysia both assume very important roles, being some of the biggest producers of palm oils.
The biggest producers, both of us.
The biggest, all of us. We've had our own ordeals in terms of dealing with the European Unions, and we've made progress there. Walk us through some of the key moments of this progress.
So I remember just 2 years ago when I was speaking in Astro Awani TV Malaysia. So they asked me the same thing about how we can actually cooperate the CPO negotiation against the WTO.
Yeah.
And then we're quite progressive, yeah, since 2 years ago, and then we won the negotiations, right? So because sometimes it's actually quite important that we need to actually show our strength, and then we need to cooperate, yeah, because all in all, two of us, this Indonesian-Malaysia relationship, 80% of the total CPO production in the world.
Worldwide.
So, and CPO, we have so many products coming from CPO, and not only cooking oil, but we have soap, we have footwear, and so on and so forth. So many
too,
products, so many products, and also the US needs the Indonesia and Malaysia CPO also, because they're finding that if they're buying it from the EU, it's actually quite expensive. So, and they cannot produce it by themselves. So they also need this CPO also coming from Indonesia and Malaysia. So that's also our modalities, yeah, as a way that we are showing our strength. We are actually the largest producers. So yeah, you need to actually go with our way, right?
Yeah.
So and then we can prove that CPO is actually quite it's not environmentally destructive. Yeah. So as long as we can actually prove that CPO is environmental friendly, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So and that is actually really the case.
Okay. We were in a lot of pressure from the EU and WTO a few years back. So is now the pressure is off, or is it easing? How's the situation
I think
right
with
now,
Trump actually, you know, dismantling all of the green stuffs is actually in a way that it's actually also benefit us, because now they are actually looking to the Trump tariff, not for the green issues, right? So and then now we have also the EU SEPA, Indonesia EU SEPA ongoing, right?
Yes.
So it's almost 10 years, and now we are quite progressive. Actually, this month or next month, we can sign the EU SEPA, Indonesia EU SEPA relation, and then this is actually quite ideal, because most of the time EU is actually the one that go against us in terms of the CPO negotiation. So in a way that we can actually collaborate eventually.
Okay.
Well, what does it entail when it comes to these agreements? I mean, we're talking about comprehensive economic partnership between Indonesia and European unions, and also in this particular context is us working together with Malaysia as the largest crude palm oil producers.
Right, right. So I remember in 2011 when I was working in Tokyo in Asian Development Bank Institute, I wrote an article about how the future is ASEAN. EU is struggling, so EU needs ASEAN in order to progress more. So in a way that we are now, it's not the subordination of the Western counterparts. We are now at a more equal partnership with the EU, with the Western countries, and so on and so forth. They need us. Of course, we need them, but they need us more, because they are actually quite struggling economically, and that they need to actually invest to avoid the steady state condition in their respected countries. So they need to invest more in order to progress. So that also benefit us. And I also spotted Pa Rosan Danantara also in this event. So I'm seeing that Danantara also going to have a very crucial role in this bilateral negotiations. And then of course with Danantara, of course, we have so many critics with to Danantara, but we have so many hopes also for Danantara, because it's 50-50 chance. If we don't do anything, so we are just like 5% growth. But if we are actually betting for another variables, maybe we can actually progress. So Danantara may be the one to be bet.
Although for a lot of countries out there, a 5% growth is a dream. But for
exceptional.
For countries that are 2 to 3%, 5 is a dream. But for us, it's 8.
8%. So industrialization is the key.
Yeah.
So industrialization meaning that you're expanding your productive capacity.
Okay.
Nowadays, our contribution, the manufacturing
18%.
sector to the GDP is about 18%. So we are aiming to have more. So with this industrialization, how can we have this industrialization? With investment. I was telling you about the investment needs, 10,000 trillion of rupees, but that's not the end. Investment, yes, we can actually industrialize, but we need also the people. We need the absorptive capacity. If the investment is coming, but our people is not working,
we have no
so
workforce
what for?
to support it.
So what for?
That would
so we
be
need actually to
useless.
also to enhance our human capital. So that is why, according to Astachita, we are also invest more and more to the people. So we are actually becoming, we are aiming not only growth, but inclusive growth.
Yeah, larger numbers, but whether or not it comes along or in the same sense of having a qualified one, that's a matter of another thing to resolve.
Yeah. That's true.
Bu Susi, give us your take on this, because obviously this is a major thing happening, and we mentioned Danantara also a bit. This is something quite new for Indonesia, initiated by the administration's President Prabowo Subianto. We need to learn from example, Temasek Holding, or from the experience of Malaysia with their National Sovereignty Wealth Fund. What's the success stories from our neighbors that we need to adopt to ensure that Danantara works for the best of our interest?
Well, all these, like Temasek, is successful because it is an authoritarian
It
state.
starts in the 70s. We start in 2025.
And it's an authoritarian state.
I see.
And so for a democratic nation like Indonesia, I think you need to build the consensus. Because people would accuse Danantara as being siphoning off state finances to fund things that are not needed. Okay, so you need to grapple with discourses. I think you need a ministry specifically doing discourses, you know, because it used to be different. It used to be people accept, but now people are democratic. In a democratic system, you just have to raise your voice, you know, and then if this raising of voices are not compatible with what you're aiming in the economic sphere, you'll never get the result. Never get the result, because people would always have differences of opinion. So you have to be persuasive. The major problem of a president is to be persuasive. Can you be persuasive enough to your people so you are acceptable? It's like, let's say, if you want to become a president, you have a whole coterie of support system. The support system is your ideological base. Can we identify the ideological base of Prabowo to be able to persuade them and persuade others along the way? Because you need this important element to have consensus, and we seem to have question marks of whether we should do this or not, because nobody's integrating the project of the government with the people at large. And the people at large cannot understand high discourses because they're not educated enough. But you need someone who can talk to them and make sure that all the projects of the government be supported. Otherwise, people would be skeptical because of the corrupt practice that's been going on.
Exactly, and with logical reasons as well. I mean, given all of these corruptions that have plagued the nations, that all of our high-ranking officials are embroiled in, Mas, how optimistic are we to have this sort of sovereignty wealth be a success for our nations? Maybe it's going to be in a long run, but we need to learn all of these successful lessons from our neighbors.
So we need the people to control it. So we need transparency so that the people can see. So as an analogy, I'm driving my car, I have a line assist, right? A line assist. So
is it a driverless car or still with a car with a driver?
Oh,
you're driving.
I'm driving my car.
I'm driving my car. I'm way into the future there. Continue.
And then whenever I cross the line, the alarm actually tilting. So democracy, the people, is actually the line assist. The government has the roadmap, but whenever the government cross the line, the people will actually, voice their concern.
Okay.
Or blow the whistles right away.
Blow the
Yeah.
whistle.
Yeah, you're off
of
track
course.
there.
So
Okay.
we need
Yeah.
democracy in order to control the government. So again, in terms of the six-dimensional institutional factors that I mentioned earlier, so we need also the voice and accountability, also to control the government. Of course, in authoritarian regime, it can be very easy, but it can be also very corrupt. We don't have the people to control it. But with democracy, now the people can see. The wealth of the public authorities now is actually in public. Everyone can actually see. Oh, you have so many cars.
Everything's transparent.
It's transparent. But you have your wage here. Your cars is using Rolls Royce, so it's not matching. So it must be a problem. So everything. If everything is transparent, people can control, and democracy is the way, the line assist that can actually lead the roadmap into our ultimate goal.
Well, here in our country, when it comes to high-ranking officials, sometimes it's not, oh, you have a lot of cars, but it's your son has a lot of cars. So it's the sons that brings it up to the public's attention.
Very interesting analogy. So before we continue our discussion, and while we wait for the result of the high-level meeting taking place right now at Merdeka Palace, we go now to the next report. Secretary General of ASEAN, Dr. Kao Kim Horn, delivered a video message at the launch of Startup ASEAN, a landmark online platform uniting over 4,000 startups, 1,087 investors, and ecosystem players across the 10 ASEAN member states with an ecosystem value of $130,000 and $280. This flagship initiative, one of Malaysia's priority economic deliverables under its ASEAN Chairmanship 2025, was delivered by the ASEAN Committee on Science, Technology and Innovation. Now, Startup ASEAN is a launch for cross-border collaboration, funding and scale-up. Let's learn more about this exciting initiative.
His Excellency Minister Chen Lee Kang, Minister of STI, mostly Malaysia. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the ASEAN Secretariat, I extend our sincere gratitude to MOSTI for inviting us to participate in this momentous event. I also wish to convey our heartfelt congratulations on the commendable progress made in advancing ASEAN's technology startup ecosystem. Under MOSTI's stewardship, Malaysia has demonstrated exceptional leadership in implementing one of our priority economic deliverables, establishing ASEAN Technology Startup Ignite. This comprehensive year-long accelerator program has been instrumental in driving startup growth across our region. We are particularly encouraged by its strong progress, having successfully connected over 11,000 startups with 5,000 investors, contributing to a thriving ASEAN startup ecosystem, now valued at more than $130 billion. Today, we witness the official launch of Startup ASEAN, a transformative initiative designed to serve as the centralized hub for all startups across our region. By seamlessly connecting entrepreneurs, investors, government institutions, and ecosystem builders across our member states, this platform embodies ASEAN's unwavering commitment to deepening regional integration while unlocking unprecedented opportunities through technology and innovation. The launch stands as a testament to Malaysia's dedication to building a platform that serves every ASEAN member state, one that champions open innovation, deepens access to capital, and positions ASEAN as a dynamic, interconnected innovation powerhouse. This achievement is further underscored by Kuala Lumpur's entry into the top 20 emerging startup ecosystem for the first time, ranking 18 in the global startup Ecosystem Report 2025 by Startup Genome. This milestone not only reflects the strong foundations Malaysia has established for its national startup ecosystem, but also demonstrates its catalytic role in elevating the entire region's innovation landscape. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, building on these accomplishments, I am confident that this initiative, under Malaysia's leadership, will successfully achieve its ambitious objectives, fostering startup-friendly policies, enhancing ecosystem readiness across all ASEAN member states, and cultivating strategic collaborations that generate meaningful partnerships. The timing of today's launch could not be more opportune. Just weeks ago, ASEAN leaders convened in Malaysia to adopt the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, commemorating the 10th anniversary of our ASEAN community's establishment. This declaration also embraces our ASEAN Community Vision 2045, a resilient, innovative, dynamic, and people-centered ASEAN, built upon 4 strategic pillars: political security, economic, social-cultural, and connectivity. Crucially, Vision 2045 reaffirms our collective commitment to harnessing innovation, embracing digital transformation, and adapting to the rapid pace of technological breakthroughs. In this period, the ASEAN Startup Platform represents a tangible and timely step forward in shaping a future-ready ASEAN, agile, enterprising, and equipped to thrive amid global shifts. In conclusion, I once again congratulate Malaysia on these remarkable achievements and commend your leadership in powering this platform that perfectly aligns with our ASEAN Vision 2045. I look forward to witnessing Startup ASEAN serve as a powerful catalyst for regional integration, economic dynamism, and shared prosperity across our community. Terima kasih. Thank you.
So there you have it. There was the Secretary General of ASEAN talking about a brand new initiative delivered by Malaysia as chair of ASEAN, a platform to accommodate all the different startups from 10 member states of ASEAN. Now, this would be very interesting to discuss with our experts here in the studio. Mas Fitra, I believe you have something to say on this very exciting initiative. How do you think this will benefit Indonesian startups in particular?
So I think this is a continuation from the earlier ASEAN Digital Economic Framework Agreement that actually the goal is in 2030 to achieve at least $3 billion of US dollars contribution from the digital economy in ASEAN. And I think 1/3 of it, if I'm not mistaken, is actually coming from Indonesia. So where is the source of fund? So this is actually becoming the source of fund. The venture capitalists, the ASEAN VC, they can finance actually the SERPs. And now we are actually going to a more digitalized world. So we need also the financing capacity, regional financing capacity that actually enable our regional sovereignty. So we are not actually hoping from other countries so that we can decide our own roadmap, ASEAN roadmap in digital economic framework agreement along with the financing capacities.
Okay, but how's the startup landscape right now in Indonesia? I mean, of course, we've had some amazing unicorns coming out of Indonesia, but what's the near future like when it comes to startups in Indonesia?
Yeah, at the current state, we're struggling because the business model is actually not sustainable.
Okay.
So in that way,
a lot of money burning, a lot of capital needed.
So in that way, we need actually to establish the ASEAN funding that is actually matched with the business sustainability. So in a way that we can actually steer our own roadmap, sustainable and prosperous.
Right. Your take on this, share with us, please.
I read that some of these digital economy is funded by SoftBank, right?
Right, yeah.
And also it's owned by other countries. If this ASEAN thing works out, maybe it'll be a bit better. And we're better prepared for the changing industrial landscape, because now you have remote control of industrialization, so they don't need that many people. The owner could be in another country and they use robotics to run the industries.
Okay.
And with training of these kind of like startup with highly attuned to technology, I think we are best prepared, our people, to do that. And I see my students who are younger, they are much more knowledgeable in terms of technology.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're faster. So you can see that we are changing face, but it's not being persuasive enough for everyone to join in, because some people are left behind, right?
Okay. I mean, with the borderless nature of this digital technology, I think the biggest worry is about the lack of policy and regulation to ensure that everyone's investments and everyone's experience will be a safe one. What do you think of this?
Now they're taxing all these shops, right? Shopee is going to be taxed by Sri Mulyani.
Yeah, yeah.
Like in America,
the traders,
we are
though,
taxed.
the traders will be taxed, which has been responded to by these online marketers, saying that we're only in a pinch now, Bu Menteri or Madam Minister, so now you're taxing us again. They're already being taxed in terms of income, not just being the seller on the online platforms.
We're not attuned enough to how to make this more efficient and effective. I think you need rules. I think Fakultas Ekonomi could push for reform of the state absorption of tax.
So more regulation or deregulation? What do you think, Mas Fitra? Which way?
Yeah, the government is aiming for a deregulation, major deregulations. I remember just 1 month ago when I was not serving at the government at that time as an economist. I was also invited along with other economists to meet the president in Sarasehan Ekonomi and Pengusaha. But President told us at that time we need a major deregulation. We have the import quotas. It's not efficient. It's actually very corrupt, and so on and so forth. So our next way is deregulation. But we still need government intervention in some sectors. So.
As the guardian rail, as you mentioned before.
So to facilitate and to actually enable the people to have the same level of playing field.
Okay.
Right. Same level of playing field. That's a key word that will bring us to the next part of our conversations. And we'll take another quick break here on Special Reports while we wait for the most anticipated outcome of the tete-a-tete meeting currently happening behind closed doors at the Merdeka Palace. Do stay with us until then. You're still watching Special Reports here on TVR World, coming to you live from the capital Jakarta, Indonesia, as we cover the bilateral meeting between President of Indonesia, Prabowo Subianto, and Prime Minister of Malaysia, Anwar Ibrahim. Currently in closed-door meetings now, and we expect results coming in, if we can make it, by the end of the closed-door meeting.
Yeah, that's our wish. But let's talk about one of the key issues that will be discussed by the leaders. Facing shared threats from terrorism, piracy, and cross-border crime, Indonesia and Malaysia reaffirmed their defense partnership during a high-level military meeting in April 2025 as they seek to deepen operational coordination and bolster regional stability.
The engagement between top commanders comes ahead of the 18th High-Level Committee, or HLC Malindo, where the nations are expected to advance joint strategies to counter transnational security challenges and manage border issues through sustained military diplomacy. The HLC Malindo, meanwhile, is designed to strengthen defense cooperation between Indonesia and Malaysia amid increasingly complex regional security dynamics. Hairul Fahmi, co-founder of Indonesia's Institute for Security and Strategic Studies, told Forum. He said the meeting, which is expected to be held in Jakarta in August 2025, aims to bolster border coordination and promote joint exercises, among other priorities. The Malacca Strait, a maritime choke point between Malaysia and Indonesia, is a vital shipping route for global trade. the strait and surrounding waters are vulnerable to piracy and armed robbery. While coordinated patrols by Indonesia, Malaysia and Singapore have reduced such incidents in recent years, the first 3 months of 2025 saw a spike, with 36 incidents compared to 11 during the same period in 2024. Fahmi said Jakarta and Kuala Lumpur aim to align operational visions at the policy and technical levels. He highlighted the need for force interoperability, intelligence sharing and patrols in sensitive areas such as the Sulawesi Sea and the nation's shared border on the island of Borneo.
Right. Well, Prof. Susi, we go way back with those visuals, but walk us through some of the key moments in terms of defense and military cooperations that we've established between Indonesia and Malaysia up to this point.
What I see from history is the spillover from defense and security agreement is into trade. It's like, whatchamacallit? Sometimes we are confused with the current situation where regionalism has a spillover effect, but actually the one who started the whole idea of defense and trade is America, because it's the hegemonic elements of Westphalian. And if we see Indonesia not having defense pact with, or not actualizing defense pact with the ASEAN members, has caused problems, right?
Yeah.
Because Indonesian military cannot talk to the Myanmar military, for instance, to persuade them not to be bad to the civilian. Right? So I was just wondering, why do you have ASEAN and not have a good defense pact between them in order to make trade more smoothly?
But it's never been the fundamental base of ASEAN working together, the military aspect, the defense aspect of it all. It's more on the economic and free trade agreements. Should we fold this into the mix as well?
This, the beginning of trade is guided by hegemonic stability theory, which is there should be a hegemon who creates stability, and then you have a guaranteed of free trade. But this hegemonic stability has been revoked or challenged by all these upstarts, right? China getting bigger, and there's no more hegemonic stability, although China has not become the hegemon yet, because you have to go through the contractive cycle, sort of like, if you want to switch from one hegemonic elements to another, there's certain things that you have to fulfill. Contractive is economic. You have to have all the elements that can bring you up to date to become a hegemon. But then again, if we learn from the past of this hegemonic stability theory, I think it's a good thing to emulate that. I mean, people are anxious, like in Indonesia, anxious of military dominance. We have problems like in Myanmar, military dominance and civilian crises. And so to create this kind of like idea that security is the base for all free trade to go smoothly, it's never occurred. So a lot of the ADM or whatever it is that ASEAN, it's never fully cleared of what they're aiming to do. The fact of the matter is each military cannot talk to each other. You know, even they have wars with each other, right? Like Thailand and Cambodia.
And currently in disputes, border disputes, closing borders to each other.
I think we should start thinking about it and make sure that you learn your history and that history can guide you. Because spillover effect is what is needed by ASEAN right now. Can we overcome challenges of security dimension and terrorism and that sort of stuff? So,
okay. Prof. Susi, I want to go back to a statement you made at the beginning of our program, where you mentioned about the rise of security groupings in the region, like Quad and AUKUS. Now, do you believe that Indonesia, Malaysia collaborating in the defense sector, in security, could offer a counter narrative rooted in Southeast Asian values and finally reaching regional peace architecture? Do you think it's feasible?
First, you have to change the textual background. Can the West accept your argument or not? Because anything that is not belonging to AUKUS or the Quad is unacceptable. Maybe. Are you with us or are you against us?
Yeah, with us or against us.
So first you have to make sure you have a good concept that is can be persuasive, and maybe that is the avenue to go through. I don't see the evolution of concepts in ASEAN. It's sort of like, it's almost like
going nowhere.
Talk and talk only, but not conceptual renderings that can be at least bargained with stronger power, because they will never accept you.
Right.
You know?
Okay. So what sort of military cooperation you think will be reached now in this summit between the leaders? I mean, what are the issues that are the contentious issues between our countries? It's terrorism, it's trafficking, it's transnational crime. What do you think of this, Mas Fitra? What would be the most hot button issues that the two leaders need to discuss about and reach an agreement?
Yeah. So if you remember the second Astachita, security issues is actually pretty much within a chapter with economy, energy, and food. So as long as we can actually have a productive capacity in order to enable people to have food, to have energy sufficiency, so we have security. Because the problem with security terrorism, why people are becoming a terrorist? Because they are suffering. So they are confronting with the government.
Yeah, a dissatisfaction.
Dissatisfaction.
Deep one at that.
Dissatisfaction. So in that way, in order to actually satisfy the security issues, according to the second Astachita, you need to be food sufficient. You need to be, in terms of energy, you have energy sufficiency. You have to be employed. And then with that, we have security.
Yeah.
So that's actually
the fulfillment of all the elements of security. And on that front, Mas, I'd like to bring up our attention and our discussion to one of the, if not the longest standing issue that we've been having with Malaysia, which is the fact that a lot of our Indonesian workers, migrant workers, are having troubles in Malaysia. And up to this point, there's been a lot of details to be ironed. Meetings have been held between high-ranking leaders. I had the opportunity to interview our ambassador of Indonesia to Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur, where he walked me through one of, if not the busiest Indonesian embassy in the world in Kuala Lumpur, where on a daily basis he informed us over 2,000 Indonesian workers are there to report problems in regards to their citizenships, their extensions of working permits, passports being detained, being held by their employers. And just the most recent case, an alumni of Malaysian Master Chef who just tortured our household assistant to death, and the case has been resolved and now been charged by the Malaysian court for 34 years. And that alone is like tip of the iceberg. We've heard cases that they just leave near to death, if not already dead, Indonesian workers at the front gate of our Indonesian embassy. And just to illustrate some of the most grave things that we are facing up to this current time with Malaysia, do you think that this will be something they need to deep dive on and find the resolution to?
Of course. So this also becoming a major concern to the president. And also, if you're seeing the cabinet members nowadays, we have also a minister that is actually tackling that kind of specific issues. But of course, this is the issue in the downstream. So we need to also come back to the upstream. What is actually the source of the problem? because of the capacity. So we are actually, of course, we have the workers. We have so many people working abroad because we don't have enough space here. The
Millions in Malaysia alone.
right.
Yeah.
So we need to actually to create economic opportunities also here. And then the government is trying also to create this kind of employment. That's actually one thing. Another thing, we need also to invest more on education. How the workers can be compatible, can be one source of productive and absorptive capacity investment coming, but we are also the people can also actually be compatible with the
Capability and capacity to do the work. You're
right,
saying, yeah.
exactly. So Amartya Sen once said, commodities and capabilities. So of course we have the commodities, but if we don't have the capacity to use it, so it will be in vain. So the government is also trying to enhance that, and also to trying to send the high-skilled workers abroad. So that if you're seeing the current account, in net transfers payment, we have the deficit. Why? Because the foreigners that is working here, high-skilled workers, they're sending the money abroad, so our loss.
We are sending out
blue-collar workers. Of course, they are also sending money, but it's actually, we have the deficit.
Is not achieved there.
The balance is not achieved. Of course, we are actually quite fortunate that we have the people that can also work abroad. But in the future, we can also send our high-skilled workers also to actually to balance the budget, not only to balance the budget, but also to have a surplus in net transfers payment. But along the way, we also trying to tackle the issues with the specific ministries handling this kind of issues, especially, of course, we have the most of the issues coming from Malaysia. So that's also becoming the major concerns, and the president also have the discussion with the Prime Minister. Of course, this is becoming the priority of the president to be tackled.
All right. How about you, Prof. Susi, with Malaysia cracking down on documented migrant workers from Indonesia, whereas Indonesia is also pushing for protection for the workers and a one-channel system. What do you want to see in terms of a concrete labor policy outcome coming out of this meeting?
First of all, the best way to induce better workers is to increase their dignity. I think in an economy that doesn't include everyone and everyone is treated badly, other people are looking at us and say, wow, bad reputation, Indonesia. And so if you have bad reputation, your people are not going to be treated well. It's like Haitian when they go to America, they look bad.
And reputation takes years to build.
Well, you aim. You aim to do that. You make sure that you give the right kind of education. Not allow teachers to use their motorcycles to go up and down to reach their schools, and they so dedicated, but the quality probably is not up to par. We must have vocational school. Why should we all go to universities? Because not everyone can afford to live like a sarjana, and a sarjana becomes a taxi driver nowadays, or ojol, you know? So you need to increase this, and you need the ability to let go of your feudalistic instinct, you know? And this is what's creating structural poverty. Structural poverty only can be improved when you give a chance to everyone on an equal basis, and make sure that if you spot someone, make sure you foster that person, you know, like mentor, mentee. I think we need to change our culture, and culture can change the politics because you need the basis, and that can be taught by Klompen Chapir in the old days. You know, it can be taught by schools. We are basically a nation in siege of people trying to get money from creditors who are not safe. You know, they just do. Materialism is so huge, has an impact, demonstration of fact, People want to have material goods, but they cannot afford it, so they do bad things. So you have to change his behavior so that everyone can afford what they need, and they don't need to have everything. You know, it's like the demonstration effect of people who are plundering Indonesia's wealth. It's causing pessimism. It's causing people to feel as if they don't belong to this country. When you have KTP, you have passport as an Indonesian, you should get the same kind of treatment. Not only the rich people can get the better treatment. So feudalistic elements has to be revoked. And too bad in UI itself, anthropology is declining. So we need anthropologists to understand why we are acting this way.
Yeah.
And then speak out loud. Nowadays, I don't see my university being the lead speaker on things. Like we knew Salo Sumarjan, we knew Kuncharaningrat, you know, the big names to help Indonesia change.
Yeah.
We're filled with plunderers who pretend to be feeding the politicians. Actually, they're feeding themselves, not feeding the politicians. You know, this is so degrading in a sense, you know, because you want to feel as if your people are as good as you are.
Yeah.
On an equal basis. Everyone has to have a good job, increase their dignity. And so we're not having a reputation of corrupt, poor country that should be treated badly. I think the treatment comes from your reputation. If you cannot lead in a good sense of a government, then your people are going to suffer. It's like the Palestinian. If you don't have a state, they're going to be killed. If you have a bad state, you're as bad compared to the Israelis, for instance, you know.
Yeah, the issue of Indonesian migrant workers in Malaysia has been quite the thorn in the relations between Indonesia and Malaysia indeed. And hopefully President Prabowo Subianto and his team could represent the interests and well-beings of these migrant workers, and we can reach a conclusive outcome.
There's simply too much pain already to talk about in this particular sector in terms of our relations with Malaysia.
It's a multifaceted problem that needs a multifaceted solution.
That's right. We just need to close that chapter and move on to a brighter one. I mean, we're proud, as you said, of all of our migrant workers, but we have concerns for them looking at all of the things that are happening right now. And on the other note pertaining to that, the allure of working to Malaysia, for example, Mas, is because due to the fact they have nothing to do at home. They're not even regarded in their own communities for not having a job, for not making income to their families. And they are these young, productive people, sometimes even bachelor graduates who have who are given no opportunities to work at all. And the fact that Malaysia can provide them with this sense of allures with 2-3 times the minimum wage and the income that they are capable of making in their home country, and that's something that's quite a seduction to go to cross over and to work until they are met with the harsh reality. But on that note, Mas, it's been said that why haven't we been able to be up to par with Malaysia has been able to do in terms of providing and multiplying the level of minimum wage that we can provide for our own citizens?
So we can learn from Malaysia.
There's deep thinking there before you answer.
Yeah, of course, because it's a very complex problem.
Yeah.
So what can we learn from Malaysia? And they soon to achieve the high
getting out of the middle income trap.
Yes. So they're actually going to the industry, creating more formal sectors. Nowadays, as I mentioned earlier, the contribution of the manufacturing sector to the GDP is only 18 to 19%. So, in a way that the formal sectors nowadays is becoming less than informal sectors. The formal sectors only 40%, maybe less. The informal sectors 60%. Just like Professor Susi mentioned earlier, we have the bachelor, undergraduate. They are actually, have degree from the university. But now they are actually going to the informal sectors because there's not enough room in the formal sectors. So we need to push the industry. So there's actually the key and also the answer for our ongoing problem. Malaysia can be Malaysia as we know today because they are pushing their industries. How they can push the industries? Through the people. They invest more on the human capital. I'm seeing all over the place. When I was taking my PhD in Japan, almost in every good university, I saw
Malaysian counterparts.
and also Vietnam.
Indians,
of course, the Indians. Okay,
At many,
yeah.
at many international organizations, their high-ranking officials are a lot of the times comprised of these nations, and we are wondering, where are we Indonesians in these parts?
That's true. That is why we have also the Astacita, Sekolah Garuda, Sekolah Rakyat. Professor,
That's starting now, Sekolah Garuda, ya Mas. Big hopes for that.
Sure. Professor Susi mentioned earlier about people in poverty. They are actually cursed to be in the poverty because
equal opportunity are not provided
not
to them.
equal opportunity, not level of, we don't have the level of playing field. We have the privileged people, we have the less privileged people. The privilege is actually going forward, but the underprivileged, they're getting more depressed. So that is why the government is investing more on the human capital in schools, Sekolah Rakyat, Sekolah Garuda, in order to actually to move up this poor people from the very poor condition to be able to absorb the economic output. So we are growing. Pak Prabowo always mentioning that we are growing 5%. But the number of poor people is also getting bigger. So our economy is not inclusive. So we need actually to have our economy to be inclusive. We need to empower the people. So we have not only we can achieve high growth, but we can achieve people dignity, as Professor Susi mentioned earlier.
The
dignity
pride of
is
being
coming
Indonesian.
from the people who can have high-paying jobs. So dignity.
And stronger passport
Stronger
as
passport,
well, if we may have it.
One step at a time, Rahmat. One step at a time.
Doing, Siska.
All right. It seems like the visit of the Malaysian Prime Minister have brought us into this deep, reflective discussion.
Exactly.
And we have many more discussions.
Moment of serenity now as we take a quick break. Siska will return with hopefully an open door to the closed door meeting right now at the Merdeka Palace. Do stay with us.
You're still watching our special report on TV RI World as the state visit by Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim is now taking place in a close meeting with President Prabowo Subianto. We are still waiting for the final result, although we're not sure that we're going to get the press statement.
We're walking on thin ice right now, meaning that the ice is anything we don't know. I don't think we're going to make it. Based on the previous state meetings, it runs very, very long, as per the case with this one as well. But while we're approaching the final minutes of our program here on TVRO, we do have the final part of our conversations and another report coming in, Siska.
Yes, so the Vice President Gibran Rakabuming Raka met with Malaysian Deputy Prime Minister Ahmad Zahid Hamidi in Jakarta in April this year. The two sides discussed the developments of bilateral cooperation in various fields. Let's learn more of the meeting.
According to Indonesia's Coordinating Minister for Human Development and Culture, Pratikno, the country's officials focus on economic interaction, development of the halal industry and protection of migrant workers. The discussion also touched on agriculture, maritime security and strengthening cooperation in education. Malaysia expressed interest in sending students to Indonesian universities for vocational training programs. The initiative aims to promote technical education programs among Indonesian students and develop the regional vocational education system. As part of efforts to promote bilateral cooperation, Malaysia plans to send more students to the Bandung Institute of Technology, especially in agricultural fields.
Right, we're at the final segment of our conversation and a special reports here on TV Our World. Mas Fitra, if you could put it all into perspective for us at this final part of our program, there's a lot to expect in terms of what's coming out of this bilateral meeting, the tete-a-tete meeting between President Prabowo and also Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. But we are putting our greatest expectation right there on the table. If you care to share yours with us, please.
Yeah, so the lowest common denominator or the modalities of this bilateral meeting should be economic issues, right?
I see.
So we have so many problems, geopolitical tensions, and so on and so forth. This should be actually discussed between the two leaders. So our president is having several concerns on the geopolitical arena nowadays, and still actually intact with the neutrality of Indonesia going everywhere in the world, going to Russia. Of course, it's not, president is not coming to G7 meeting because of administrative problem, because the Russian invitation is coming before the G7.
Right.
But
we have the leaders retreat with Singapore.
Of course, we have
around
also,
the same dates.
We have also some phone calls, private phone calls with the U.S.
Yeah, Donald Trump right before the St. Petersburg meeting.
Right. Macron is also coming, investing to us.
Yeah.
And then we need to actually enlarge our ASEAN dignity. That's actually the goal also for this meeting. So these two leaders is actually the what do you say? The alpha leaders.
The alpha leaders.
The alpha leaders.
Leader of the pack.
Of the region.
And the if we compare it with the previous leaders, this is actually one of the most outward-looking leaders that we have today.
Okay, the most progressive.
And then outward-looking meaning that we very comprehensive in terms of having some negotiations, and then foreign invitation, foreign discussions, and so on and so forth. These two leaders, and they're brothers. They're actually inspired to each other. And then well, I must say that between Indonesia and Malaysia, if we cooperate and we can actually becoming the ASEAN leaders, the de facto leaders of ASEAN, we can actually go forward with ASEAN and also beyond ASEAN. Because as I mentioned to you earlier, ASEAN alone is going nowhere. We need to become the regional hub. As I remember just several years ago, one of my Malaysian friend, when we met at the Northeast Asia Think Tank Working Group, he said to me that I'm joining the TPP. As Malaysian, we are joining the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership at that time, because we need to level up our national capacity. If we are also only, in the ASEAN level, we are not going anywhere. So we need to collaborate not only within the ASEAN member countries, but also beyond ASEAN. And ASEAN has actually the very foundation to become the regional hub. And I wrote a book about it, Trade Strategy in East Asia, from regionalization to regionalism. So we are going from the market-driven, we're collaborating, market-driven, market issues, and so on and so forth, towards a more institutionalized approach. And ASEAN can become the center of attention. So in a more fragmented world, ASEAN is a more regionalized than before.
Right. And the 132 point something billion US dollars as the capital, the venture capital on behalf of ASEAN can be a great kickstart to reach that, the points that you mentioned there.
But maybe in the future we can actually also merge Kasana and Danantara. Why not?
Wow.
Why not? And also Temasek, also in a way.
And call our countries Malindo or Indomal.
Or in synergy, right?
Because in economy, call it the economies of scale. If we can actually level up, so it's actually better for ASEAN countries also.
Okay. How about you, Prof. Susi? What is your expected outcome of this state visit in terms of the relations between our two countries?
Emulate the way professionalism is developed by Malaysian. I think increased capacity of people, like Fitra said, will increase our dignity and will increase our reputation.
Yeah.
Especially with high-skilled people of Indonesia that is prepared for the next industrialization phase of Indonesia. I think we are going in the right direction if all the education of Indonesian are being implemented correctly.
Right. Let's talk of something that's, I mean, you mentioned this briefly, that Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has had something very strong to say about what's currently happening in the Middle East, what the region is currently embroiled in, the recently escalating tensions, Iran and Israel. The U.S. folded into the mix, and up to this point, the ceasefire seems to stand, but we don't know where to go from here. But walk us through the possibility of these two leaders who have definitely voiced their very strong, although different dictions of each and every one of them, opinions of the same stance in these issues. Something on the table out of the Jakarta meeting today that will further solidify the commitments of these two countries to not only start delivering speeches, remarks, but take a common action against the warmongering from the western part of it all.
Well, I think not only Donald Trump that create peace. We remember JCPOA has China, Russia, European Union, and America trying to set up the nuclear inspections of Iran. I think for this kind of like ceasefire to go on into peace, we need other people or other nations to come in together with the U.S., not only Donald Trump, but maybe European Union, maybe ASEAN, maybe China, maybe Russia.
NATO, which is congregating in the Netherlands.
Yeah, I don't know how far NATO can influence Donald Trump.
Maybe more
Donald
the Ukraine-Russia part, right?
Donald Trump wants to abolish
NATO and all kinds of multilateralities.
The hardest part is to convince Donald Trump that he needs other nations to pacify the region, because he relies too much on Israel and on the idea of the greater Israel to pacify the whole region. I don't think that that'll ever happen, because what Israel has done now will reduce their reputation as a passable, leader for the area. So we need to have peace, and the peace can only be orchestrated by all the nations that are Muslims, because the Muslims are the ones who are being accused of creating riots and creating upheaval in the world. I think it's about time that Muslim nations that are kind of moderate to come into the picture and then help the Middle East to become better. Because I think President Prabowo has an idea of getting them together in Indonesia. But if Donald Trump will be the initiator, maybe we could do something. And Donald Trump loves to be loved. So we must show a little bit of love to Donald Trump. And then he will be softening up, not saying, Daddy.
And Pak Prabowo also have the idea of, getting the UN change the headquarters from the US to Bali.
Oh, that's nice.
So, so because we are in the safe zone, right? So US is one of the core of the conflict. So if we actually put UN in Bali, so it should be neutral.
Right.
It'll never happen.
What about the one in Geneva?
Yes.
Right. But they will be happy in Bali. We can assure that. From our G20 presidency, it was great deliberation there.
If the seawall are finally going to be erected, because we're all going to dry.
Wow. Enlightening discussion indeed. Thank you so much for your time and valuable insights. Prof. Susi Sri Suparin S. Sudarman, Senior Lecturer at International Relations Studies of the University of Indonesia, and Fitra Faisal Hastiadi, Presidential Spokesperson and Expert Staff on Economic Issues. It's been our privilege and great luck to have you here in the studio.
I'm personally very delighted to have you both. I've learned so much. Thank you very much for allowing us to pick your brains in the past couple of hours.
Thank you, Prof.
We can have special classroom.
I would love that.
Looking forward to that.
And just a quick update that we are not making it to the end of the closed door meetings between President Prabowo and also Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. We will update you in the next bulletins right here on TV Our World. With that, we bid you adieu. From Jakarta, Indonesia, I'm Rahmat Idris.
And I'm Siska Becker. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.
Bye-bye.